Let's now get some reactions from the opposition on the We Charity story. We have with us Pierre Poilievre. He's a Conservative MP and the party's finance critic. Mr. Poilievre, good evening and thank you for speaking with us here on CTV News Channel. Welcome to the show.
Good evening to you.
So how are you assessing the payment details from We to Prime Minister's family members?
It's astonishing. Here we have a Prime Minister personally intervening to direct a dubious, sole source, exclusive $900 million contract to an organization that we now learn had paid his family members $300,000. This is the conduct of a corrupt tin pot dictator.
What about the Prime Minister's office response to this, that the family participates in a variety of charity events? I mean, isn't that a fair statement for a family involved in an area of philanthropic work?
Yes, that's fair.
But what do you make of the defense here?
There is no defense. That's not a defense. That would be a defense if they went and supported the charity. But that's not what happened. The charity supported them. So the Prime Minister's statement doesn't even address the issue. The issue is that his family was paid $300,000 by this organization, and then he subsequently, knowing that, presumably, went to a cabinet meeting and helped direct a $1 billion sole-sourced exclusive contract to this one organization.
Mr. Poilievre, while Ethics Commissioner is looking into the close ties and the conflict of interest angle after, of course, the Conservatives and the NDP raised this issue, what's the scope of investigation here and how do you plan to keep this story going?
Well, I have initiated hearings at the Finance Committee that will be undertaken throughout this month. There will be 4 hearings where we expect to hear witnesses from across the public service and perhaps elsewhere related to the charity. And we will be filing a report by early August with our findings. We will seek witnesses and we will command testimony from them under oath.
Now, what about this contract to administer Canada's Student Service Grant of $912 million program? What alarmed you the most about it? Was it the figure? Was it the fact that the Prime Minister said that this was the only organization that could carry such a program? Or was it the close ties between the family and this organization?
All 3. Let's start with them one by one. The nature of the program. Well, we already have that program. It's called the Canada Summer Jobs Program. Every year for the last 2 decades, the Employment and Social Development Department has provided charities and not-for-profits with wage subsidies to help them hire students. If the Prime Minister wanted more of that, he could have just increased funding for that program, and then every charity or not-for-profit in the country could have applied for it. So the fact that he directed it to this one organization suggested favoritism, some sort of strange and massive departure from a program that he knows well and that has worked for Canadians for 2 decades. Secondly, he calls it a paid volunteer program. Well, there's no such thing as paid volunteership. And when language is abused, it's usually indication of other abuse, as we're learning today. And then third, the family contacts. I can't even imagine being in a cabinet meeting and advocating a single dollar from the taxpayer go to an organization that had paid my family any money. I would immediately get up and leave the room, and I would formally recuse myself if any such decision came before me were I minister. And that's what any minister would do. But the fact that the Prime Minister thought it was appropriate to sit there in the room, perhaps directing or chairing the cabinet meeting, to give $1 billion to a very unusual, new and unnecessary program design, to an organization that he knew his family had received $300,000 from, is pure and simple, it is corruption.
Now, we know, Mr. Poilievre, that these payments were made between 2016 and 2020, and we know that this is not the first time that a sole contract is being awarded to this organization. My question to you is, why the opposition now and not the previous occasions?
I guess we just found out about it. We didn't realize that the Liberals were doing this, that they were funneling this money to the charities. We also didn't realize at the time that this organization was paying the Trudeaus so much money. I guess we assume that Trudeau's words meant what they said when he claimed that his family helps.
But we were seeing the family members participate in these events over a period of time. It's not that it just happened in 2020.
Yeah, and
did that sort of surprise you in the past?
There's no problem with participating in events. It's the cash. It's the cash. It's the $300,000 of cash. It's normal for a prime minister's spouse and perhaps in some cases family members to go to events. It's not normal for them to get $300,000 for it. And it's certainly not normal for the prime minister then to give that same organization $1 billion. So those are the facts that did not exist until now. And those are the facts that make this a spectacular scandal.
And briefly, if you could, sir, what do you think should happen after the findings of the Ethics Commissioner? Whether or not they find, of course, the Prime Minister guilty, we'll have to wait and watch. But if the Prime Minister is found guilty, it's not like he hasn't been guilty in previous 2 occasions. What after that for the Prime Minister?
Yeah. You make a good point. It's becoming more of a pattern than a news story. It's like, you know, oh, what's new? Justin Trudeau was found guilty of breaking the law yet again, as though we should all sort of yawn and say, well, this is normal behavior for our Prime Minister. He's the only one in Canadian history that's been found guilty of violating the Ethics Act. Not once, but twice. This would be a hat trick if it happens. Mm-hmm. I guess I would just say that I'm hoping this time the RCMP is watching carefully. Mr. Trudeau violated the law when he took a $200,000 or $300,000 vacation to the Aga Khans Island, and then subsequently simultaneously, his government was giving $15 million to the Aga Khans Foundation. Mm-hmm. And we were disappointed that the RCMP did not do its job in that case. So hopefully this time the National Police Force will actually do its job and hold the Prime Minister accountable.